The night Adrian Vale decided to pretend he was paralyzed, he was standing barefoot on the cold marble floor of his penthouse, staring at the city that worshipped him. By morning, he would be a broken man in a wheelchair. And by the end of the month, he would lose the woman he thought he loved and find the one who would save his soul. Adrian Vale was 38, a self-made tech millionaire whose cybersecurity empire, Vale Dynamics, had turned him into a legend in business magazines. He had grown up in a cramped apartment above his father's repair shop, watching his parents argue about bills. He had promised himself that one day, money would never be a problem again. He kept that promise. But somewhere between the IPO and the champagne galas, Adrian began to feel a quiet fear gnawing at him. He had wealth, influence, and a stunning girlfriend, but he didn't know if anyone loved him without the shadow of his fortune. His girlfriend, Vanessa, was a former model with flawless posture and a smile that photographers adored. They had been together for almost a year. She was elegant, attentive, and always impeccably dressed. But Adrian had started noticing things, small things. She never forgot to mention his status when introducing him to friends. She always steered conversations toward investments, properties, luxury, vacations. And whenever he talked about slowing down or taking risks that might hurt his company, she would tense. Insecurity is important, Adrian. She would say sweetly. You worked too hard to lose it. Security, stability, wealth. But what about love? The doubt grew until it became unbearable. Adrian wanted certainty. He wanted to know who would stay if the empire fell. So he made a decision that would change everything. The plan was simple but extreme. With the help of his longtime friend and personal doctor, Dr. Marcus Hensley, Adrian staged a car accident while returning from a late-night board meeting shooting. The accident was convincing. Airbags deployed, glass shattered, a public ambulance call. The story that followed was devastating. Spinal trauma, temporary paralysis from the waist down, uncertain prognosis. When Vanessa arrived at the hospital, her scream echoed down the corridor. "Oh my God, Adrian," she cried, clutching his hand as he lay still on the bed. Adrian forced himself not to move his legs as doctors and nurses buzzed around them. He saw genuine fear in her eyes, and for a brief moment, guilt stabbed him. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe she truly loved him. For the first week, Vanessa was attentive. She brought flowers, read to him, held his hand during physical therapy sessions. She posted heartfelt messages online about us standing strong together. But slowly, things began to shift. The doctors told her recovery could take months, possibly years. Adrian watched the subtle change in her expression when she thought he wasn't looking. Her visits grew shorter. Her phone buzzed constantly. One afternoon, when she thought he was asleep, he heard her whisper near the window. "Though, why didn't sign up for this, Chloe?" she muttered to her friend on the phone. "He can't even walk, and the board is already questioning his leadership." Her voice lowered. "If he can't run the company, what happens to everything?" Adrian felt something inside him fracture. It wasn't the fear of losing her. It was the realization that he already had. After 2 weeks, Adrian was discharged and moved back to his penthouse, now equipped with ramps and a temporary medical setup to maintain the illusion. That was when he met Elena Marquez. Elena was 29, hired through a private agency as a live-in housemaid and caregiver to assist with daily tasks. She had soft brown eyes, a quiet presence, and hands that moved with gentle efficiency. Unlike Vanessa's polished glamour, Elena wore simplicity like a crown. She had grown up in a small coastal town, the eldest of 3 siblings. Her father had died when she was 17, and she had worked multiple jobs to support her family. She carried responsibility like second nature. On her first day, she entered Adrian's room without pity in her eyes. "Good morning, Mr. Vale," she said calmly. "I'll help you get ready." Her tone was respectful, but not fawning. Adrian studied her as she adjusted his blankets and organized his medications. "Do you feel sorry for me?" he asked abruptly. She paused, meeting his gaze steadily. No," she said. "I don't." The honesty startled him. "We believe people are more than what happens to them," she added quietly. "You're still you." No one had spoken to him like that since the accident. Vanessa visited less frequently after Adrian returned home. She complained about the ramps disrupting the aesthetic of the penthouse. She avoided conversations about long-term adjustments. One evening, during dinner, she sighed dramatically. "This is just so hard," she said, pushing food around her plate. Adrian looked at her from his wheelchair. Hard for who? For both of us, she replied quickly. Our lives were supposed to be glamorous. We were supposed to travel, attend events. And now, she hesitated. Now everything feels different. There it was. Different. Adrian nodded slowly. Later that night, he overheard her arguing on the balcony. Well, I can't keep pretending everything's fine, she hissed into her phone. He might never walk again. The words pierced deeper than he expected. Pretending. She was the one pretending. Meanwhile, Elena became a steady presence in his daily routine. She encouraged him during physical therapy. Even though he wasn't actually paralyzed, he had to maintain the act. You're stronger than you think, she would say as he grimaced through fake frustration. Sometimes they talked about life. Elena told him about her mother's small bakery back home, about her dream of opening a community center one day. You don't seem impressed by money, Adrian observed once. She smiled faintly. Money solves problems. It doesn't create meaning. The simplicity of her philosophy unsettled him in a way Vanessa never had. One afternoon, a rainstorm cut the power to the penthouse. Vanessa canceled her visit, citing traffic and bad vibes. Elena lit candles and sat by the window with Adrian. It's beautiful, she said, watching lightning streak across the sky. He realized he hadn't slowed down to admire a storm in years. You're not afraid of the dark? He asked. She shook her head. I've survived worse. Something about her resilience stirred him. For the first time since the accident, he felt alive. But the lie weighed heavily. Each day he remained in the wheelchair, Adrian felt a growing shame. Elena treated him with unwavering respect, adjusting his schedule, helping him through moments of staged frustration. He saw her exhaustion some nights when she thought he wasn't looking, yet she never complained. One evening, he made a deliberate mistake, knocking over a glass in anger, pretending despair. Why is this happening to me? He snapped. Elena knelt to clean the shards. She avoided his eyes. I can't live like this forever, she whispered. I'm too young. There it was, no more pretense. So what are you saying? He pressed. Yeah, I think we should take a break. He almost laughed. You mean you're leaving, he said calmly. She didn't deny it. She didn't deny it. The lawyer placed documents on the table regarding shared investments and property rights. Adrian felt strangely calm. Okay, he said simply. Vanessa blinked, surprised at the lack of resistance. That's it, she asked. That's it, she left with barely a backward glance. The door clicked shut. Silence filled the penthouse, and for the first time, Adrian felt free. Elena found him staring out the window later that night. She's gone? She asked softly. Yes, I'm sorry. Don't be, he replied. He turned his wheelchair slightly toward her. Easy. But tell me something, Elena, he said quietly. If I never walked again, would that change how you see me? She stepped closer. I don't see you as a man in a wheelchair, she said. I see you as someone trying to figure out who he really is. The honesty in her voice nearly broke him. Broke him. He realized then that his test had revealed more than Vanessa's heart. It had exposed his own. He had built walls of wealth to protect himself, assuming love had to be verified through loss. But Elena hadn't needed proof. She had simply shown up. Every day. Without conditions. The truth could not remain hidden forever. One evening, as Elena helped him prepare for bed, Adrian felt the weight of deception crush him. Crush him. I need to tell you something, he said, voice unsteady. She looked concerned. Are you in pain? Yes, he replied, but not the kind you think. He took a breath and slowly stood up from the wheelchair. Elena froze. For a moment, confusion flickered across her face. You can stand? Yes. Realization dawned. You were never paralyzed. No, silence thickened between them. Why? She asked, threading her voice. Why wanted to know who loved me without my money, he confessed. I thought if everything was taken away, the truth would reveal itself. And I was part of your experiment? She whispered. Her eyes filled, not with anger, but disappointment. That hurt more. I never meant to hurt you, he said desperately. You changed everything for me. She stepped back. You tested the wrong thing, Adrian, she said quietly. A love isn't proven by suffering. It's proven by trust. The words struck him harder than any accusation. She left the room. And for the first time, Adrian felt truly helpless. The next morning, Elena packed her small suitcase. I can't work for someone who lies about something so serious, she said calmly. I understand, he replied, his voice heavy. Do you? She asked gently. You didn't trust anyone, not even yourself, Belle. Said. He had no answer. Before leaving, she paused at the door. For what it's worth, she said softly. I would have stayed, not because you're rich, not because you're broken, but because you're broken, but because you're human. Then she walked away. Adrian stood alone in the silent penthouse, the wheelchair abandoned in the corner. He had tested love and nearly lost the only real version of it. Days passed. He couldn't focus on work. He couldn't sleep. He realized something crucial. He had used deception to search for honesty. And that contradiction had cost him the one person who saw him clearly. So he did something he had never done before. He humbled himself. Adrian drove to the small coastal town Elena had once described. He found the bakery owned by her mother, its windows fogged with warmth. Elena stood behind the counter, surprised when the bell chimed. He walked in slowly, on his own 2 feet. Customers glanced at him, confused. Elena, he said softly. She stiffened. I came to apologize, he continued. Not to explain, not to justify, just to say I was wrong. She listened silently. I was afraid, he admitted. Afraid that if I lost everything, I'd be nothing. But you showed me that I was already more than my money, and I ruined it by not trusting you. The bakery was quiet. I don't expect forgiveness, he added. But I had to tell you the truth. Elena studied him for a long moment. You look different, she said finally. Why am? What changed? You did. Silence stretched between them, but this time it felt softer. You hurt me, she said honestly. I know. But you also told the truth when it mattered. He nodded. I can't promise I'll never doubt again, she continued. But if we try, it has to be built on honesty. No more test. No more test, he agreed. Slowly, cautiously, she stepped closer. And this time, when she looked at him, there were no conditions, only possibility. Months later, Adrian made changes not just in his heart, but in his life. He stepped back from the spotlight, appointing a new CEO while remaining involved strategically. He invested in Elena's dream, a community center in her hometown, but not as a savior, as a partner. He worked side by side, building something meaningful. Vanessa occasionally appeared in tabloids with new wealthy companions. Adrian felt no bitterness, because he had learned the difference between admiration and love. One evening, standing outside the completed community center as children laughed inside, Adrian turned to Elena. Why pretended to be paralyzed? He said softly, but I was the one who couldn't see. She smiled. And now I see clearly. She took his hand, not because he was a millionaire, not because he had tested her, but because he had chosen honesty over fear. And in losing the illusion of love, Adrian Vale had finally found the real thing. Sometimes life doesn't break you to punish you.